Imagine a world where every sunrise is a cosmic battle, a clash between life and death, light and darkness, order and chaos. A world where every moment teeters on the edge of destruction and creation, where human survival depends on the precarious balance of these forces. The Aztecs, the proud people who once ruled the heart of Mesoamerica, believed in a reality that was far from the ordinary. Their world was not just one of physical existence, but of metaphysical struggle, a world shaped by the will of the gods, where every event, every action, and every breath was a part of an eternal war. But what if I told you that this battle was not just an abstract idea? What if I told you that it was a battle that could only be fought with human blood, that the fate of the world rested on rituals of unimaginable sacrifice, on the offering of hearts, the shedding of blood, and the surrender of life itself? The gods, the celestial beings who held the threads of creation in their hands, were not distant, untouchable entities. They were warriors, each one engaged in their own battle for supremacy, fighting to maintain cosmic order. But who were these gods? And how did their mythologies shape the very lives of the people who worshipped them? At the center of it all stood Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god of war and the sun. Born fully armed, emerging from the womb of his mother, the earth goddess Quatique, Huitzila was not just a god of light, he was a fierce protector, a warrior whose journey across the sky each day represented the eternal struggle between creation and destruction. He fought not just for power, but for survival of the world, of the people, and of the gods themselves. But as with all warriors, Huitzila had enemies, and the greatest of these enemies were his own siblings beings who embodied the darker forces of the cosmos. His sister, Koyotsaki, the moon goddess, and his brothers, symbols of death, chaos, and destruction, all sought to undermine his power and return the world to the darkness it once knew. It was in their treachery that Huitzila's mythic battle began an act that would forever shape the Aztec worldview. In the sacred texts of the Aztecs, the story is told, Koyotsaki and her siblings, fearing the power of their unborn brother, conspired against their mother to prevent his birth. But their plot failed. Huitzila emerged, fully grown, fully armed, and immediately set out to reclaim the world from those who sought to destroy it. His battle against his siblings was fierce and unrelenting. With one swift blow, he dismembered his sister, hurling her head into the sky where it became the moon. His other siblings, scattered across the heavens, became the stars, each one a symbol of the eternal conflict that would never end. Every dawn, the Aztecs believed, was a reenactment of this cosmic battle, a daily renewal of the fight between light and darkness. The sun, representing Huitzila's victory, rose in the sky, triumphing over the forces of the underworld. But as the day faded into night, the god descended into the realms of death, battling the lords of darkness to ensure that the sun would rise again. His fight was never-ending. It was a fight that demanded constant renewal, constant sacrifice, constant bloodshed. Humanity, in the Aztec worldview, played an essential role in this cosmic drama. It was not enough for the gods to fight alone. The gods needed strength, the kind of strength that could only come from the life force of humans. And so, the Aztecs offered what they believed the gods needed most: their blood, their hearts. These were not mere rituals, they were the very essence of survival. Each offering was a renewal of the battle, a plea for the gods to continue their fight and ensure the survival of the world. But while the gods of war and death dominated the mythologies, there were others, more peaceful, more creative, whose contributions to the Aztec worldview were equally important. Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, represented the dual nature of existence. He was not a god of war like Huitzila, but a god of wisdom, agriculture, and civilization. It was Quetzalcoatl who gave the Aztecs maize, the sacred grain that sustained their civilization. He embodied the delicate balance between nature and culture, between the earthbound and the celestial, between life's necessities and its rituals. Through his sacrifices, Quetzalcoatl not only created humanity, but also laid the foundation for everything that made the Aztec world flourish. It was through him that the great cycle of life, death, and rebirth began. He was the god who brought the rain, the wind, and the seasons, ensuring that the crops would grow and the people would survive. His offerings to the gods, like those of Witsila, were essential to maintaining cosmic balance. But where Witsila's offerings were born of violence and bloodshed, Quetzalcoatl's were born of wisdom and creation, an important reminder that both destruction and creation were necessary to sustain life. Tlaloc, the rain god, was another essential part of the Aztec pantheon, controlling the waters that nourished the earth and made agriculture possible. The Aztecs saw him as a benevolent yet unpredictable god, one whose anger could cause devastating droughts or floods. It was through his power that crops grew, that people thrived. But to Tlaloc, as with all gods, humanity owed a debt, one that could only be repaid through ritual sacrifice. These gods, each powerful in their own right, were not just distant deities. They were part of the fabric of Aztec life, worshipped, feared, and appeased through elaborate ceremonies. The Aztecs believed that by maintaining the correct relationship with the gods, they could ensure the world's survival, protect themselves from destruction, and keep the balance of the cosmos intact. But to do so, they had to offer their gods what they needed most: blood, life, and devotion. As we step deeper into this world of myth, mystery, and sacrifice, remember, every ritual, every offering, every battle of the gods was a reflection of the very nature of life itself, fragile, fleeting, and in constant peril. The gods fought to sustain the world, but it was the people who fought to sustain the gods. This was the true Aztec worldview, a worldview that saw humanity not as separate from the divine, but as an integral part of it. If you're intrigued by this powerful worldview, if the story of the Aztecs, their gods, their rituals, and their beliefs has sparked a fire of curiosity within you, then make sure you subscribe to our channel. By doing so, you'll help us create more content that dives deep into the heart of ancient civilizations, exploring their fascinating histories and uncovering the mysteries of the past. Don't miss out on our next video, it's just around the corner. Subscribe now and join us as we continue to explore the rich, complex, and awe-inspiring world of the Aztecs. Thank you for being a part of this journey with us. As we journey further into the realm of the Aztec gods and their unyielding struggle to maintain cosmic order, we must understand that the battle between light and darkness wasn't merely a celestial event. It mirrored every aspect of Aztec life, from the grand rituals performed by priests to the everyday struggles of common people. Every action was tied to the belief that humanity's role was not just to exist, but to act as a vessel for the divine will. Each sacrifice, each offering, was a necessary exchange in the cosmic economy. And this was no metaphor. This was the Aztec reality. In their worldview, the gods required constant nourishment, a nourishment that could only come from human blood and hearts living, beating symbols of vitality that held the power to sustain the universe itself. Huitzilopochtli, the hummingbird god, embodied this delicate balance in the most striking way. He was a warrior, a god of fierce and unyielding force, yet his journey was not just one of battle, it was a journey of survival, survival of the cosmos. Without Huitzila's daily victory over the forces of darkness, the sun would never rise, and with it, the world would crumble into oblivion. Every sunrise was his triumph, a testament to the fragile nature of life, the impermanence of order, and the constant threat of chaos that loomed over the world. Huitzila's struggle was not just against his enemies, but against time itself, the eternal battle against entropy that all living things must face. But even a warrior god like Huitzila wasn't immune to the deeper cosmic forces that shaped the universe. As he waged his eternal war in the heavens, the other gods around him played their own critical roles in maintaining the delicate balance. Among these gods was Quetzalcoatl, the feathered serpent god, who represented a different aspect of existence, one not of destruction, but of creation, wisdom, and renewal. He was the god of life's growth and flourishing, the one who sowed the seeds of civilization and knowledge. His sacrifices were not of blood and death, but of wisdom and benevolence, offering humans the gifts of knowledge, agriculture, and culture. Quetzalcoatl's role in the Aztec pantheon was crucial for more than just survival, it was essential for human development. He gave the people maize, the sacred grain that served as the foundation of Aztec society, and through him, the people understood the cyclical nature of life and death. But Quetzalcoatl's power wasn't just in his ability to give life, it was in his understanding that death, too, was a part of life's natural order. Where Huitzilo's fire was necessary to burn away the old, to make room for the new, Quetzalcoatl's gift was the nurturing of growth, the sustenance of life, and the wisdom to understand that the cycle of life, death, and rebirth must never be broken. Yet, as the gods of life and wisdom worked to nurture the world, there were forces that sought to disrupt it. Tlaloc, the rain god, was one such force, benevolent yet capricious. His moods dictated the prosperity or destruction of the harvests. For the Aztecs, rain was the very lifeblood of the earth. Without it, crops withered, famine took root, and the delicate balance of their society would collapse. But as with all the gods, Tlaloc's favour could not be earned through mere prayers or offerings. It demanded sacrifice. And sacrifice was not just an act of devotion, it was an act of survival. The Aztecs believed that their very existence depended on appeasing these gods, offering them what they craved most: blood, life, and devotion. To the Aztecs, the gods were not distant, untouchable figures who watched from afar. They were intimately involved in the world's every aspect, shaping the lives of the people with their actions and their needs. They were the architects of both life and destruction, of creation and decay. Their wrath or their favour could mean the difference between life and death, abundance and scarcity. And so, the Aztecs understood that their lives were not their own. They existed in a world where every action had cosmic consequences, and where they were linked to the divine in a symbiotic relationship that demanded the giving of their own vitality in exchange for the preservation of the world. As we explore deeper into this cosmic drama, we come to understand the significance of sacrifice. Sacrifice wasn't just a religious observance, it was the core of Aztec life. From the highest priests to the common farmers, everyone understood that survival wasn't guaranteed. Every day was an opportunity to participate in the gods' eternal struggle. The gods needed strength that could only come from the life force of humanity. And so, every ritual, every offering, was a way to nourish the gods, to ensure that they had the strength to continue their fight against the forces of darkness. The Aztecs were not simply performing rituals, they were participating in a cosmic game of survival. The very structure of Aztec society reflected this understanding. The empire's grandeur, its military conquests, and its impressive feats of engineering were all driven by a profound belief in the necessity of keeping the gods satisfied. The elaborate pyramids, the towering temples, and the intricate calendars were not just markers of human achievement, they were sacred tools designed to maintain cosmic balance. Every battle fought, every tribute collected, every ceremonial offering made was part of a larger effort to keep the universe in harmony. But while the gods demanded sacrifice, they also bestowed gifts upon humanity, gifts that allowed civilization to flourish. It was Quetzalcoatl who brought wisdom, Tlaloc who brought rain, and Huitzila who fought to keep the sun rising. These gods gave humanity the tools it needed to survive knowledge, food, and protection, but only in exchange for something just as precious: life. And so, the Aztecs lived with the constant awareness that life and death were intertwined. They could not survive without the gods, but the gods could not continue their battle without humanity's offerings. It was a fragile, delicate relationship, a mutual dependence that defined every aspect of their existence. In understanding this worldview, we also come to understand the depth of the Aztec connection to their gods. The gods were not abstract forces or distant deities. They were real, living entities who shaped the world with their will. The Aztecs didn't see themselves as passive recipients of divine favor. They saw themselves as active participants in the grand cosmic drama, warriors in their own right, fighting to ensure that the world would continue to exist. And as such, every act of sacrifice was a necessary contribution to this battle. Each drop of blood offered, each heart given, was an act of survival, a way of ensuring that life would continue, that the sun would rise again, and that the gods would continue their fight to preserve the balance of the cosmos. So, when we look at the Aztecs, we don't just see a people who worshipped gods. They see a people who understood their place in a world that was constantly on the brink of chaos. They saw themselves as warriors in a cosmic struggle that had no end and no beginning. A struggle where each day was a victory and each night a renewal of the fight to keep the world in balance. And as we move forward in this exploration of the Aztec worldview, let us remember, it was a world that demanded not just belief, but action. It was a world where survival was not a given, but a constant, active participation in the eternal fight between creation and destruction. Imagine, for a moment, standing at the edge of a world that is not static, not predictable, but in constant flux, a world held together only by the fragile threads of cosmic order. In this world, sacrifice is not just an offering, but a necessity. The gods, in their celestial wisdom, are locked in an eternal struggle to maintain the balance of the universe. And this battle plays out in ways that are beyond human comprehension. What the Aztecs understood, perhaps more deeply than any other civilization, is that the survival of their world, the continuation of life itself, depended on their willingness to partake in this cosmic drama, to offer what was most precious, their own blood, their own hearts. The gods were not just distant figures in the sky or powerful deities residing in temples. They were active participants in the cycle of life and death, creation and destruction. To the Aztecs, the gods were not simply beings of immense power. They were warriors, and their wars were fought not just with the forces of darkness, chaos, and death, but with the very forces that gave life to the universe. To maintain balance, these gods needed sustenance, a sustenance that could only be provided by the Aztecs themselves. This idea of cosmic sacrifice was rooted deeply in the Aztec understanding of their relationship with the divine. They believed that the gods needed nourishment, just as humans need food and water to survive. The gods required the life force of humans to sustain them. And this nourishment, this vital essence, could only be drawn from the offering of human blood and hearts, symbolizing the very essence of life. It was not a simple act of devotion. It was a necessary exchange that kept the cosmos in motion. In the Aztec worldview, each act of sacrifice was an affirmation of the fragile and fleeting nature of life. Life was precious, yet constantly threatened by the forces of destruction that loomed on the horizon. The gods, in their eternal battle against these forces, required constant nourishment to continue their fight and to keep the universe from descending into chaos. The Aztecs believed that by offering their blood, they were ensuring that the gods would have the strength to maintain the cosmic order, that the sun would rise each morning, and that life would continue for another day. But sacrifice, as understood by the Aztecs, was not merely about appeasing the gods. It was a way of acknowledging the cyclical nature of existence. Life and death were not opposites, but two sides of the same coin. In offering their blood and their hearts, the Aztecs understood that they were not simply giving life to the gods, but also participating in the eternal cycle of creation and destruction. Each offering was an act of renewal, a renewal of the forces that governed the cosmos, and a reminder of the interconnectedness of all life. The sun god, Huitzilopochtli, embodied this struggle more than any other deity. As the god of war and the sun, his daily journey across the sky was a literal reenactment of the battle between light and darkness, life and death. Every morning, as the sun rose, it was a victory of light over darkness, of order over chaos, and of life over death. But as night fell, the sun god descended into the underworld, fighting to ensure that the sun would rise again. It was a never-ending battle, one that required constant sacrifice, for only through the offering of blood could the gods continue their fight. The Aztecs understood that this battle was not theirs to fight alone. They were not passive observers of the cosmic struggle, but active participants in the ongoing war. Through their sacrifices, they believed they were ensuring the survival of the world, for the gods needed their offerings to maintain the balance of the universe. It was this deep understanding of the interconnectedness of life and the divine that motivated the Aztecs to offer their hearts and blood, not as a mere act of piety, but as a vital contribution to the cosmic order. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice permeated every aspect of Aztec society. From the most powerful emperor to the humblest farmer, every individual played a role in maintaining the cosmic balance. The priests, The warriors, and even the common people, understood that their actions had cosmic consequences. The rituals, the ceremonies, and the sacrifices were not just religious observances, they were acts of survival. Each offering was a reminder of the fragility of life and the constant need for renewal. Without sacrifice, the gods could not continue their fight, and without the gods' struggle, the world would fall into chaos. In many ways, the Aztecs saw themselves as the lifeblood of the gods. The gods were warriors who fought to preserve the universe, but it was humanity that ensured they had the strength to continue their battle. Through their blood, the gods were nourished, and through the gods' victory, humanity was assured of survival. It was a symbiotic relationship, one that was built on mutual dependence and a shared understanding of the precariousness of life. But sacrifice was not always easy. It was not just a matter of ritual, it was a matter of personal sacrifice, of offering something precious and irreplaceable. The Aztecs believed that only through the offering of the most valuable thing, human life, could the cosmic order be maintained. And so, the people willingly gave their lives, not just for the gods, but for the survival of the world itself. Every sacrifice was an affirmation of the belief that life was fleeting and fragile, and that the gods' power could only be sustained through the offering of life. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice, in the idea that life could only continue through the giving of life, shaped every aspect of Aztec culture. It influenced their politics, their art, their architecture, and their very way of life. The grand temples and pyramids, the intricate calendars, and the military conquests, all of these were part of a larger effort to maintain the cosmic balance. The Aztecs built their empire not just for political power or territorial conquest, but to ensure that the gods had the strength to maintain order in the universe. In this sense, the Aztecs were not just fighting to survive in the physical world, they were fighting to survive in the spiritual world as well. They believed that the gods were constantly at war with the forces of chaos and destruction, and that their survival depended on their ability to participate in this war. Through their sacrifices, they were ensuring that the gods would have the strength to protect them, that the sun would rise each day, and that life would continue. But the question remains, why did the Aztecs believe so strongly in the necessity of sacrifice? What drove them to offer their blood, their hearts, and their lives to the gods? The answer, perhaps, lies in the nature of their worldview. The Aztecs saw themselves not as separate from the gods, but as an integral part of the cosmic order. They believed that every action, every thought, and every breath was part of a larger divine plan. In their eyes, life and death were not opposites. They were two sides of the same coin, each necessary for the other to exist. As we reflect on the Aztec worldview, it becomes clear that sacrifice was not just a religious duty, it was a way of life. It was a means of survival, a way of ensuring that the gods would continue their struggle to preserve the cosmic order, and that the world would continue to exist. The Aztecs did not offer their lives because they were required to, they offered them because they believed that without sacrifice, the world would fall into chaos. And in the end, it was this belief, this deep understanding of the fragile nature of life, that drove them to continue their sacrifices, to offer their blood, and to ensure that the battle between light and darkness would continue, day after day, year after year. In this cosmic dance of creation and destruction, the Aztecs understood that every sacrifice was not just an isolated event, but part of a larger, eternal cycle. The offering of human blood and life was intertwined with the very rhythm of the universe, a necessary act to sustain the forces that held it together. Yet, what sets the Aztec worldview apart from others is the profound connection between the divine and humanity, where the gods were not merely subjects to be worshipped from afar, but powerful entities with whom humans were directly involved in the preservation of life. The Aztecs believed that the gods were intimately connected with the physical world and, in turn, with the fate of humanity. Their survival was tied to the gods' success in their cosmic struggles. The gods' victories over darkness, disorder, and destruction ensured that the world would continue to turn, that the sun would rise, and that the cycle of life would repeat. However, the gods themselves could not accomplish this without the active participation of humankind. This symbiotic relationship was central to the Aztec concept of sacrifice. It was not a one-sided offering. It was an exchange, one that ensured that both the gods and humanity would continue to thrive. This idea of an interconnected cosmos extended beyond mere ritual. It shaped the very structure of Aztec society. Their social, political, and military systems were designed around the need for regular, meaningful sacrifices. From the humblest individuals to the greatest leaders, everyone had a role to play in maintaining the cosmic balance. The emperor, a figure revered not only for his political power but also for his spiritual responsibility, led the way in ensuring that the gods were appeased. But it was not just the ruling class that participated. Every citizen understood that their own survival depended on the offerings they made to the gods. Whether through warfare, agriculture, or ceremonial rituals, each action was seen as part of the grand design that kept the universe in motion. The centrality of sacrifice within Aztec culture gave rise to magnificent temples, monumental pyramids, and intricate works of art. These were not just expressions of human creativity, they were tools of divine appeasement, built to honor the gods and to create spaces where the sacred and the mortal could meet. The grand temples that dotted the landscape were more than places of worship. They were symbolic gateways to the gods, spaces where the cosmic battle between life and death, light and darkness, could be reenacted. Within these sacred spaces, the offerings took place, where human lives were given in the belief that through their sacrifice, the gods would receive the strength to continue their eternal struggle. But what, then, does it mean to participate in this cosmic drama? The Aztecs believed that to give one's blood was not just an act of faith, but an act of survival. Through their sacrifices, they ensured that the gods would fight to protect them, that the sun would rise again, and that life would persist. It was a cycle that could not be broken, for the very fabric of existence relied on the gods' ongoing struggle, fueled by human devotion. This was the reality the Aztecs lived, by a reality where every life, every action, was a part of a greater, divine plan, one that required constant sacrifice to maintain the balance of the cosmos. And it was through this perpetual exchange that they ensured not only their survival, but their place within the ever-turning wheel of the universe. The world of the Aztecs was a world in perpetual motion, constantly shifting between creation and destruction, life and death. This was not merely a reflection of the natural cycles that defined the passage of time, but a deeper, metaphysical reality, an eternal war fought between the gods, the forces of chaos, and the universe itself. Each action, each moment in this world had cosmic consequences. The Aztecs understood this truth. The fate of the world rested not just in the hands of their gods, but also in the hands of every individual who lived within their realm. To preserve the cosmic order, to maintain the delicate balance between light and dark, between life and death, they understood that sacrifice was not optional, it was a necessity. In their belief system, the gods were not distant, detached entities, existing in a world far removed from the lives of human beings. No, the gods were as involved in the day-to-day affairs of the Aztec people as the sun itself, rising each morning and setting each night. They were powerful, yes, but they were also vulnerable, dependent on the blood, the hearts, the very essence of human life, to sustain them in their eternal struggle. This struggle was the reason the gods fought, the reason they existed at all. It was not for power, not for dominion, but for survival of the universe, of the gods themselves, and of the people they protected. At the heart of this belief was the sun god, Play. As the embodiment of both light and war, Vitzila's daily journey across the sky was not simply a physical one, it was a cosmic battle, a representation of the eternal fight between creation and destruction. As the sun rose in the east, it marked Vitzila's victory over the forces of darkness. But this was no easy victory. It was a victory that demanded constant sacrifice. Each day, Vitzila fought, and each day he needed to be renewed, replenished with the strength that only human sacrifice could provide. His battle was not one that could be fought alone. He needed the people, their offerings, their hearts, their blood, to ensure that the sun would rise again. And so, the Aztecs believed that it was through these offerings that they contributed to the survival of the cosmos, to the daily triumph of life over death. Vitzila's struggle, while symbolic, was also deeply personal. The gods were not abstract figures whose battles played out in some far-off realm. They were intimately involved in the lives of the Aztec people. The world was their battlefield, and every sacrifice was a part of the ongoing struggle to maintain balance. The Aztecs were not mere worshippers, they were warriors too. They fought alongside the gods, offering their very lives to ensure that the cosmic forces of chaos would not overwhelm the universe. In this way, the sacrifice was a mutual exchange, a symbiotic relationship between the gods and humanity, each depending on the other to maintain the delicate balance that sustained existence. But sacrifice, while a necessary part of this grand cosmic dance, was not an easy thing. It was not something the Aztecs did out of fear or obligation alone. It was something they did out of a deep understanding of their place in the universe. They recognized the fragility of life, the constant threat of destruction, and the need for renewal. The offering of blood, the giving of hearts, was not just an act of devotion, it was an act of survival. It was an acknowledgement that life itself was a fragile, fleeting thing, and that in order to continue, the forces of creation and destruction must be in constant motion. Each offering was an acknowledgement that life could not be taken for granted, that the world would not continue without a constant renewal of energy, of vitality, of life itself. The gods, too, were not immune to the forces of destruction. Even they needed to be replenished, to be nourished, to be strengthened by the offerings of the people they protected. And so, the Aztecs believed that their sacrifices were not just a form of worship, but a vital part of the cosmic cycle. In giving their blood, their hearts, their very essence, the Aztecs believed they were ensuring that the gods could continue to fight, that the sun would continue to rise, and that life itself would continue to flourish. This understanding of sacrifice as a means of survival was central to the Aztec worldview. It was not just about maintaining cosmic order. It was about ensuring that life would continue to exist, that the universe would remain in balance, that the gods would have the strength to fight the forces of darkness. The Aztecs, in this sense, were not simply participants in a cosmic struggle. They were active contributors to the forces that governed the universe. Each sacrifice, each offering, was a part of a larger plan, a divine design that stretched across the cosmos. And so, the Aztecs saw their place in this world not as passive observers, but as integral parts of a divine mechanism, essential to the survival of the universe. They understood that without their sacrifices, without their participation, the gods could not maintain balance, and the world would fall into chaos. This belief permeated every aspect of Aztec society. From the highest priest to the humblest farmer, everyone played a role in this grand cosmic drama. This understanding of sacrifice was reflected not just in the religious rituals and ceremonies, but in the very structure of Aztec society. The grand temples and pyramids that dotted the landscape were not merely architectural wonders. They were sacred spaces where the cosmic battle between life and death, light and darkness, was reenacted. These temples were the heart of Aztec society, places where the people gathered to offer their sacrifices to the gods, to ensure that the cosmic order would be maintained. These structures were not just buildings, they were symbolic representations of the divine forces that held the universe together, and the sacrifices offered within them were seen as a vital part of the ongoing battle between creation and destruction. The Aztecs, then, understood that sacrifice was not just a religious duty, it was a way of life. It was a way of ensuring that the gods had the strength to continue their eternal struggle, that the sun would rise again, and that life would continue. They recognized that the world was in a constant state of flux, a state of tension between opposing forces, and that in order for life to continue, these forces had to be kept in balance. Each act of sacrifice, each offering, was a way of contributing to this balance, of ensuring that the gods had the strength to continue their fight and that the world would survive. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice was not confined to the religious sphere. It was woven into the very fabric of Aztec culture. The Aztecs saw themselves as part of a larger cosmic order, and they understood that their actions had consequences far beyond their immediate surroundings. The offerings made in the temples, the blood spilled in rituals, were not just for the gods, they were for the survival of the world itself. The Aztecs believed that without their sacrifices, the cosmic balance would be disrupted, and the world would descend into chaos. This understanding of the interdependence between the gods, humanity, and the cosmos was central to their worldview, and it shaped every aspect of their lives. As we reflect on the Aztec worldview, we see a people who understood the fragility of life and the importance of maintaining the balance of the cosmos. They did not see sacrifice as a mere religious observance, but as a vital part of the ongoing struggle to ensure that the world would continue. They understood that the survival of life depended on the constant exchange of energy, of vitality, between the gods and the people. In offering their blood and hearts, the Aztecs participated in the cosmic cycle of creation and destruction, ensuring that the sun would rise again and that life would continue. This was the essence of their belief, a belief that life, in all its fragility and beauty, was something that had to be constantly renewed, constantly sacrificed for, in order to survive. And in this belief, the Aztecs found purpose, meaning, and a profound understanding of their place in the universe. In the Aztec worldview, the importance of sacrifice transcended religious rituals. It was the very foundation upon which their existence was built. The act of giving blood and hearts, while deeply symbolic, was not simply a form of piety or devotion. It was a deeply pragmatic, necessary act that connected the human to the divine, the mortal to the eternal. This act was the Aztecs' contribution to the cosmic battle, their way of ensuring that the balance between life and death, creation and destruction, was maintained. It was a duty, a responsibility, but above all, it was an acknowledgement of the deep interdependence between humanity and the gods. Without sacrifice, without these offerings, the gods would weaken, and with their weakening, the sun would fail to rise, the crops would wither, and chaos would reign. This interconnectedness between the gods and the people was more than just a spiritual belief. It was a practical reality that governed all aspects of Aztec life. From the emperor down to the common farmer, everyone was aware that they had a role to play in maintaining the cosmic balance. The emperor, as the highest figure in Aztec society, understood that his power and authority came not just from his political status, but from his ability to serve as a conduit between the gods and the people. He was the one who led the most important rituals, the ones that ensured the continued favor of the gods and the survival of the empire. He gave his blood, his heart, not just as a leader, but as a participant in the cosmic struggle that defined the Aztec worldview. His sacrifices were not just for his people, but for the world itself. But it was not just the emperor who participated in these rituals. Every individual in Aztec society, regardless of their social standing, understood the importance of their contribution to the ongoing cosmic drama. The common farmer, the warrior, the priest, all played their part in ensuring that the balance of the universe remained intact. The rituals they performed, the sacrifices they made, were not isolated acts. They were part of a greater, divine plan that stretched far beyond the immediate concerns of daily life. In their sacrifices, the people of the Aztec Empire were acknowledging their place within the larger cosmic order, recognizing that their survival was tied to the survival of the gods and, in turn, the survival of the universe itself. This belief in sacrifice as a fundamental principle of survival was reinforced through the grandeur of Aztec architecture, particularly their temples and pyramids. These monumental structures were not just architectural feats. They were sacred spaces designed to bring the people closer to the gods, to allow them to participate directly in the cosmic struggle. The grand pyramids were built as places of sacrifice, where the gods and the people could meet, where the energy of life could be exchanged in the form of offerings. The sacrifices made in these temples were not just acts of worship, they were acts of survival, performed with the understanding that without them, the world could not continue. The temples themselves were representations of the divine forces that shaped the universe, their towering structures symbolizing the unyielding connection between the heavens and the earth. Through these rituals and sacrifices, the Aztecs understood that they were not separate from the divine. They were part of it. The gods, though powerful, were not omnipotent. They required the sacrifices of the people to maintain their strength, to ensure that the cosmic balance was preserved. The gods were warriors in their own right, locked in a perpetual battle against the forces of darkness and chaos. But they could not win this battle alone. They needed the people to offer their vitality, their strength, their very lives to ensure that the sun would rise, that life would continue. The Aztecs, in turn, understood that they too were warriors in this cosmic battle, fighting alongside the gods to preserve the universe and its delicate balance. In this way, the Aztec concept of sacrifice was deeply intertwined with their understanding of the world. It was not a simple exchange of offerings, but a profound acknowledgement of the interconnectedness of all things. Life and death, creation and destruction, were not opposing forces, but two sides of the same coin. The Aztecs understood that to sustain life, the forces of destruction were just as necessary as the forces of creation. Without destruction, there could be no renewal. Without death, there could be no rebirth. Each act of sacrifice was a reaffirmation of this truth, a recognition that life was fragile and fleeting, but also cyclical, and that for life to continue, there had to be a constant exchange of energy between the mortal and the divine. This worldview shaped not only the religious practices of the Aztecs, but their very way of life. Every aspect of their culture, from their politics to their art, from their architecture to their warfare, was driven by the belief that the survival of the world depended on their sacrifices. The Aztecs did not live in isolation from the gods. They lived in a world where the gods were ever present, shaping their lives, their actions, and their destinies. The offerings they made, the rituals they performed, were a way of participating in the divine order, of ensuring that the gods had the strength to continue their fight and that the balance of the cosmos would be maintained. Through their sacrifices, the Aztecs were not only ensuring their own survival, they were ensuring the survival of the world itself. They understood that without their contributions, the cosmic forces of chaos would overwhelm the universe, and life would cease to exist. Their blood, their hearts, their very essence, were the fuel that kept the cosmic engine running. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice, this understanding of the interconnectedness of all life, was at the core of Aztec society. It was a belief that transcended religion, that permeated every aspect of their culture, and that shaped the way they lived, fought, and died. In this sense, the Aztec worldview was one of profound responsibility. The people understood that their actions had far-reaching consequences, that they were not merely pawns in a cosmic game, but active participants in the survival of the universe. Each act of sacrifice, each offering, was a recognition of the delicate balance that held the world together. The Aztecs believed that through their sacrifices, they were ensuring that the gods would continue their fight, that the sun would rise again, and that life would continue. And in this way, the Aztec people saw themselves not as subjects of the gods, but as partners in the ongoing battle to preserve the cosmic order. In the heart of the Aztec worldview, sacrifice was not a mere act of devotion. It was a vital expression of the delicate balance that held the universe together. Life, as the Aztecs understood it, was not an isolated individual experience, but a shared struggle in an ongoing cosmic battle, where every action, every offering, carried profound implications for the survival of not just humanity, but the entire cosmos. The gods, ever in conflict with the forces of darkness, chaos, and destruction, relied on human participation to maintain their strength and uphold the cosmic order. This was a reciprocal relationship, one where the gods gave life and protection, and in return, the Aztecs offered their own vitality, in the form of blood and hearts, to nourish the gods and ensure the survival of the world. The world the Aztecs inhabited was a living, breathing entity in constant flux, where light and darkness, life and death, were not opposing forces but two sides of the same coin. They were interconnected, dependent on one another for existence. The Aztecs saw themselves not as passive recipients of divine favor, but as active participants in a larger, divine mechanism that required constant intervention. Each sacrifice they made was not simply a religious observance, but a conscious act of survival, a vital contribution to the ongoing struggle to preserve life. At the center of this cosmic drama was Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, as the embodiment of both war and light. Huitzila's daily journey across the sky was a literal reenactment of the cosmic battle between creation and destruction. The sun rose every day as a victory for Huitzila, a victory of light over darkness, order over chaos, life over death. But this victory was not won easily. Each day, Huitzila faced the forces of darkness, struggling to rise again and again, to renew the world and protect it from annihilation. His battle was relentless and required constant nourishment. It was the blood and hearts of the Aztecs offered in ritual sacrifice that replenished him and enabled him to continue his fight. Huitzilo's struggle was more than a symbolic representation of the sun's daily journey. It was a reflection of the very essence of existence, fragile, fleeting, and always on the brink of destruction. For the Aztecs, every sunrise was a reaffirmation of life, a victory over the forces that sought to extinguish it. But just as Huitzilo's victory was renewed each day, so too did the Aztecs believe that their sacrifices renewed the strength of the gods, keeping the universe in balance and ensuring that life would continue. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice was not just a theological concept, but an integral part of Aztec society. Every aspect of their culture, from their architecture to their military conquests, was deeply tied to their understanding of the cosmic struggle. The grand pyramids, towering temples, and intricate calendars were not merely expressions of human achievement or divine worship. They were the tools the Aztecs used to interact with the divine, to ensure that the gods had the strength to maintain order. The priests, the warriors, the farmers, all played a role in the cosmic drama, each contributing their energy to the survival of the world. But sacrifice, as the Aztecs understood it, was not just about appeasing the gods. It was an acknowledgement of the interconnectedness of all life. In offering their blood and hearts, the Aztecs were not just giving to the gods, they were participating in the ongoing cycle of creation and destruction. Life, in the Aztec worldview, was cyclical, not linear. Each act of destruction was followed by an act of creation, and each act of creation was balanced by an act of destruction. This perpetual cycle ensured that life remained in motion, that energy continued to flow through the universe, and that the gods had the strength to maintain balance. In this sense, the Aztecs saw themselves as both warriors and nurturers. They were warriors in the cosmic struggle, offering their vitality to sustain the gods, ensuring that the forces of darkness did not overpower the forces of light. But they were also nurturers, understanding that the gods needed their sacrifices to continue their fight. This mutual dependence between humanity and the divine was the foundation of Aztec society. It was a reciprocal relationship, where the gods gave life and protection, and in return, the people offered their vitality, ensuring the survival of the cosmos. The Aztec understanding of sacrifice was not confined to religious rituals alone. It shaped every aspect of their lives, from their politics to their daily actions. The emperor, the highest figure in Aztec society, understood that his role was not just to rule, but to serve as a conduit between the gods and the people. He was the one who led the most important rituals, offering his own blood and heart to maintain the cosmic balance. In this way, the emperor was not merely a political leader, but a spiritual leader, whose sacrifices were necessary for the survival of the universe itself. This understanding of sacrifice as a vital part of the cosmic order was reflected in the grandeur of Aztec architecture. The pyramids, temples, and sacred spaces were not just architectural marvels, they were the places where the gods and humans met, where the exchange of energy took place. These structures were designed to bring people closer to the divine, to allow them to participate directly in the cosmic struggle. The temples were more than places of worship. They were the physical manifestations of the cosmic forces that held the universe together. Within these sacred spaces, the Aztecs offered their sacrifices, ensuring that the balance between life and death, creation and destruction, would be maintained. But even as the Aztecs offered their sacrifices, they understood that life was fragile. The gods, too, were vulnerable. They were not omnipotent beings who could exist without the nourishment provided by human offerings. The Aztecs recognized that without their contributions, the gods would weaken, and with their weakening, the forces of chaos would return. It was a delicate balance, one that required constant intervention, constant sacrifice. Each offering was a recognition of the fragility of life and the essential role that humans played in maintaining the cosmic order. In the end, the Aztecs believed that their sacrifices ensured the survival of not just the gods, but the world itself. Their offerings were not just acts of devotion, they were acts of survival. They understood that life could not continue without the constant exchange of energy between the gods and humanity. The gods needed their sacrifices to maintain their strength, and in return, the gods would continue to protect and nurture the world. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice, this understanding of the interconnectedness of all life, was the foundation of the Aztec worldview. It was a worldview that saw every act of life, every offering, every battle as part of a larger cosmic plan, a plan that required the active participation of both humans and gods to ensure that the world would continue to turn. The Aztecs saw themselves not as subjects of the gods, but as partners in the ongoing cosmic struggle. They understood that without their sacrifices, the gods could not maintain balance, and the world would fall into chaos. Their role in this struggle was essential. Through their blood, their hearts, and their vitality, they ensured the survival of the universe itself. It was a profound responsibility, one that shaped every aspect of their culture and way of life. And in this responsibility, the Aztecs found meaning, purpose, and a deep understanding of their place in the universe. In the midst of this cosmic drama, the Aztecs not only understood their role as participants, but as essential agents of the gods' ongoing battle to preserve balance. The world they inhabited was not one of separation but of interdependence. The gods, mighty though they were, required the sacrifices of humanity to keep the cosmic order intact. This exchange of vitality was not merely a ceremonial act, it was woven into the very fabric of their existence. Through their sacrifices, the Aztecs sustained the gods, ensuring that the sun would rise, the rains would fall, and life itself would continue in its cyclical dance. The idea that life could not exist without destruction, and that destruction was inherently linked to creation, permeated the Aztec mindset. Each sacrifice, each offering, was a necessary disruption in the natural order, one that cleared the way for the renewal of life. They viewed themselves as custodians of the earth, caretakers of a delicate system where their actions, no matter how small, had the power to shift the cosmic balance. The people of the Aztec Empire knew that their world was fragile, that the forces of chaos were always lurking on the horizon, waiting for a moment of weakness to overwhelm the delicate harmony that had been established by the gods. And so, they acted not just as a means of devotion, but as warriors in their own right. The Aztecs were keenly aware that the survival of the world depended on their active participation. The emperor, the high priests, the warriors, and even the farmers played integral roles in ensuring that the gods received the necessary offerings to keep the forces of darkness at bay. Every sacrifice, whether it took place in the heart of the grand temples or in the quiet of a rural farm, was part of the larger, cosmic effort to maintain the balance. At the center of the Aztec worldview stood not just the gods themselves, but the cyclical nature of existence. Life, death, and rebirth were not viewed as isolated events, but as continuous processes that were necessary to sustain the world. The Aztecs saw the gods as guardians of these cycles, each one embodying a different aspect of the struggle. Huitzilopochtli, the sun god, was the embodiment of the constant fight between light and darkness, life and death. The sun rose every day as a victory, but that victory required constant renewal. The gods could not sustain the world alone. The people, too, had to give of themselves, offering their blood, their hearts, to ensure the strength of the divine and the continuation of the cosmic cycles. In this way, the act of sacrifice transcended the realm of mere ritual and became an essential expression of the Aztec understanding of the universe. They saw their sacrifices as acts of partnership with the gods. They were not just asking for blessings, they were actively participating in the renewal of the world. By offering their hearts, their blood, they were giving the gods the strength to continue their struggle, to ensure that the balance of life and death, creation and destruction, remained in place. The gods needed the people as much as the people needed the gods. This understanding of the relationship between the divine and humanity was central to Aztec society. It was not enough for the gods to fight alone. They required the energy, the vitality, and the devotion of the people to maintain their strength. The grandeur of the Aztec temples and pyramids reflected this understanding. These architectural marvels were not simply places of worship. They were cosmic gateways where the people and the gods could meet, where the energy of life could be exchanged. They were symbolic representations of the ongoing battle between life and death, light and darkness, creation and destruction. The role of sacrifice in Aztec society was also deeply tied to the concept of community. The offerings made by individuals were not isolated acts. They were contributions to a collective effort. The Aztec people understood that their survival was not dependent on any single individual, but on the survival of the community as a whole. This was why sacrifice was not a solitary act, it was a communal responsibility. The sacrifices were not made for the benefit of one person, but for the survival of the entire world, for the gods, and for future generations. The idea of collective responsibility extended to the emperor, who held the most important role in Aztec society. As the leader of both the political and religious life of the empire, the emperor understood that his personal sacrifices were not just for his own people, but for the entire cosmos. His offerings were the most sacred of all, as they symbolized the connection between the divine and the earthly realms. The emperor was the bridge between the gods and the people, and it was through his sacrifice that the cosmic balance was maintained. His blood, offered in ritual, ensured that the gods would have the strength to continue their battle and that the world would not descend into chaos. This profound understanding of sacrifice as a vital part of cosmic balance also permeated the military culture of the Aztecs. Warfare was not seen as merely a means of conquest or expansion, but as a necessary part of the ongoing cosmic struggle. The warriors who fought in battle were not just fighting for the empire's power, but for the survival of the universe itself. The warriors' victories, their strength and bravery in battle, were considered offerings to the gods. Their blood, spilled on the battlefield, was seen as an essential contribution to the survival of the cosmos, a contribution that ensured the gods' continued strength and the preservation of the world. For the Aztecs, the idea of sacrifice was not one of suffering, but of giving in order to create life. It was a reflection of their belief in the cyclical nature of existence and the interconnectedness of all things. They understood that life was fragile and fleeting, but that it was also part of a much larger, eternal cycle. By participating in this cycle through their sacrifices, the Aztecs ensured that life would continue to flourish, that the gods would have the strength to fight, and that the cosmic order would remain intact. Ultimately, the Aztec concept of sacrifice was not just a religious duty, but a way of life. It was a way of understanding their place in the universe, of acknowledging their role in maintaining the balance that held the world together. The sacrifices the Aztecs made were not just acts of devotion. They were vital contributions to the survival of the universe, essential exchanges between humanity and the divine. The Aztecs saw themselves not as passive recipients of divine favor, but as active participants in a grand cosmic struggle. Through their sacrifices, they ensured that life would continue, that the gods would have the strength to protect them, and that the universe would remain in balance. The Aztec worldview was one built upon the foundation of a delicate cosmic balance. For the Aztecs, the survival of the world depended not only on the gods, but on the continuous effort of humanity to participate in the eternal cosmic struggle. Life was not viewed as a linear journey. Instead, it was an ongoing cycle, an interplay between creation and destruction, light and darkness. In this complex dance, sacrifice was not just an act of worship or a form of devotion. It was a necessity, a vital thread woven into the very fabric of existence. At the heart of this belief system was the understanding that the gods were not distant, detached entities. Rather, they were living, breathing forces that interacted with humanity on a daily basis. The Aztecs understood that their gods, powerful as they were also vulnerable, requiring constant nourishment to maintain their strength and keep the world in balance. This nourishment came from the offerings of the people, whose vitality symbolized through blood and hearts was the fuel that sustained the gods. The gods, in turn, fought to preserve the world, to ensure that the sun would rise each day, that the rains would fall, and that life would continue in its perpetual cycle. The sun god, Huitzilopochtli, stood at the center of this cosmic drama. His daily journey across the sky was not merely an astronomical event, it was the representation of the eternal battle between creation and destruction, life and death. Each day, as the sun rose in the east, Vitzela triumphed over the forces of darkness, bringing light and warmth to the world. But this victory was not without cost. Every day, the sun god faced the forces of destruction, and each victory required the renewal of his strength. This renewal, according to the Aztecs, came through the sacrifice of human life. The blood and hearts offered to the gods were not only an expression of devotion, but a necessary act to ensure that the sun would rise again, that the cycle of life would continue. For the Aztecs, the sun was not just a celestial body. It was a symbol of the ongoing battle that defined existence. The daily cycle of the sun, its rise and fall, mirrored the cyclical nature of life and death, creation and destruction. The Aztecs believed that every sunrise was a reaffirmation of life, a victory over the forces that sought to extinguish it. But just as the sun required constant sacrifice to rise again, so too did the gods require continuous offerings to maintain the cosmic order. The Aztecs did not view themselves as passive recipients of divine favor. They understood that their sacrifices were vital contributions to the survival of the world. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice permeated every aspect of Aztec life. From the highest priest to the lowliest farmer, every individual played a role in the ongoing cosmic struggle. The Aztecs understood that their actions had far-reaching consequences, that every offering made in the temples, every ritual performed, was not just for the gods, but for the survival of the world itself. In their sacrifices, the people of the Aztec Empire participated in the divine mechanism that kept the universe in motion. Without their contributions, the balance between life and death, light and darkness, creation and destruction would be lost, and the forces of chaos would overrun the world. Sacrifice, however, was not always easy. It was not a practice undertaken out of mere fear or obligation. The Aztecs understood that life itself was fragile and fleeting, and that without the constant renewal of energy through sacrifice, the universe could not survive. Each offering, each act of devotion, was a conscious acknowledgement of the cyclical nature of existence. Life and death were not opposites. They were intertwined, part of the same endless cycle. Each act of destruction made way for creation, and each act of creation required destruction. In this sense, the Aztecs saw sacrifice as a necessary disruption of the natural order, a disruption that cleared the way for renewal, for the continuation of life. The emperor, as the highest figure in Aztec society, played a pivotal role in this cosmic drama. He was not only the political leader of the empire, but also the spiritual leader who stood at the intersection of the divine and the mortal realms. His sacrifices were of the utmost importance, for they ensured the continued favor of the gods and the survival of the empire. The emperor's blood was offered in the most sacred of rituals, where his vitality was exchanged for the strength of the gods. In this way, the emperor acted as the conduit between the gods and the people, ensuring that the cosmic balance was maintained. The role of sacrifice was not confined to the religious sphere alone. It was reflected in the very structure of Aztec society. The grand temples, towering pyramids, and intricate calendars were not merely markers of human achievement or divine worship. They were tools the Aztecs used to interact with the divine. These structures were designed to facilitate the exchange of energy between humanity and the gods, to ensure that the forces of creation and destruction remained in balance. Within these sacred spaces, the people offered their sacrifices, knowing that without them, the world would fall into chaos. These sacred spaces were more than places of worship. They were cosmic gateways, where the mortal and the divine met, where the energy of life was exchanged to ensure the survival of the universe. The Aztecs recognized that without their contributions, the gods would weaken. The gods were powerful, but they were not omnipotent. They needed the vitality of humanity to continue their struggle. Each offering made by the people, whether through blood, hearts, or other forms of devotion, was a vital contribution to the cosmic cycle. The gods, in turn, fought to maintain the balance, to ensure that the world would continue to turn, that the sun would rise each day, and that life would flourish. The idea that sacrifice was a necessary part of the cosmic order was not confined to the temples or rituals. It was woven into the very fabric of Aztec society. The people understood that their survival was tied to the survival of the gods, and that every act of devotion, every ritual performed, was part of the larger cosmic struggle. The grand achievements of the Aztec Empire, its military conquests, its intricate architecture, and its cultural accomplishments were all driven by the belief that the survival of the world depended on the gods' continued strength. The sacrifices offered by the people were the fuel that allowed the gods to fight, to protect, and to ensure the survival of the world. In this way, the Aztecs saw themselves not as subjects of the gods, but as active participants in the ongoing cosmic struggle. They understood that the gods could not maintain balance without their contributions, and that the world would fall into chaos if their sacrifices were not made. The Aztecs believed that through their blood, their hearts, and their vitality, they ensured the survival of the universe itself. It was a profound responsibility, one that shaped every aspect of their culture and way of life. In this responsibility, the Aztecs found meaning, purpose, and a deep understanding of their place in the universe. Ultimately, the Aztec worldview was one of active participation in the eternal battle between creation and destruction, life and death. Sacrifice was not just a religious duty, it was a way of life, a way of ensuring that the cosmic balance was maintained, that the gods had the strength to continue their struggle, and that life would continue to flourish. The Aztecs understood that life was fragile, but that through their sacrifices they ensured that the world would continue to turn, that the sun would rise again, and that the forces of chaos would be kept at bay. The act of sacrifice was a vital expression of their connection to the gods and to the eternal struggle that shaped their existence. As they offered their blood, their hearts, their very lives, the Aztecs understood that they were not merely performing rituals, they were participating in the ongoing renewal of the world. They were warriors in the cosmic battle, fighting not with swords and shields, but with their vitality, ensuring that life would continue, that the balance of the universe would be preserved, and that the gods would have the strength to protect the world. In this way, the Aztecs understood that their sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, but vital contributions to the survival of the universe itself. Their sacrifices were the lifeblood of the gods, ensuring that the sun would rise each day, that the rains would fall, and that the cosmic cycle of life and death would continue uninterrupted. The concept of sacrifice in Aztec society extended far beyond ritual and ceremony. It was ingrained in the very soul of their culture. For the Aztecs, every act of sacrifice was a conscious choice, not simply an obligation, but a moral responsibility that resonated with the deepest elements of their belief system. The gods, although mighty and powerful, were not self-sufficient in their quest to maintain cosmic order. They were deeply dependent on the energy, the vitality, and the devotion of the human race. This relationship between humans and gods was not one of subordination, but one of mutual dependence. Humanity could not survive without the gods, and the gods could not uphold the balance without humanity's offerings. Each sacrifice was a living testament to the profound and reciprocal bond between the divine and the mortal. The essence of the Aztec understanding of life and death was rooted in this cycle of offering and receiving. The very fabric of their world was woven with the threads of cosmic energy, constantly being replenished by the vital contributions of the people. These offerings, blood, hearts, the precious essence of life itself, were more than simple religious rituals. They were acts of reciprocity that ensured the survival of the world. The gods' power, their strength to fight against chaos and darkness, was renewed through these sacrifices, and as the gods fought, they ensured the protection and prosperity of the human world. One of the most profound aspects of Aztec sacrifice was that it acknowledged the fragility of existence. Life, in all its beauty and vibrancy, was fragile and fleeting, and it could not continue without the constant renewal of energy that came from human sacrifice. The gods needed nourishment, and this nourishment came in the form of vitality offered by the people. But the sacrifice itself was not seen as an unfortunate or burdensome necessity. Instead, it was celebrated as an essential act to preserve life, to preserve the world in all its intricacies and beauty. At the core of the Aztec view of sacrifice was the understanding that all things life, death, creation, destruction were inextricably interconnected. For them, death was not something to be feared, but a necessary part of the cycle that ensured the continuation of life. Each act of destruction, each offering of life, made space for new growth, new creation. The offering of blood and heart symbolized the death of the old to allow for the birth of the new. In this sense, death was viewed not as the end of existence but as a transformative force, an agent of renewal. This cyclical view of life was evident not just in their religious practices but also in their daily lives, their social systems, and their worldview. The Aztecs believed that their survival was tied to the success of the gods' eternal battle to keep chaos at bay. This understanding was reflected in every aspect of their culture. It was not just the priesthood or the elite who participated in the sacred sacrifices. It was the entire population, from the emperor to the common people. The emperor's role was particularly significant as he stood at the crossroads between the divine and the human. His sacrifices, his acts of devotion, were viewed as the ultimate gesture of cosmic responsibility. The emperor, as a leader and as a spiritual figure, was the most visible symbol of the connection between the divine and the human realms. His sacrifices, offered on the grandest scale, ensured that the cosmic forces were maintained and that life continued for all. Even in their military conquests, the Aztecs believed that the sacrifices of warriors, soldiers, and captives played a crucial role in the survival of the cosmos. Their strength and bravery in battle were seen as contributions to the larger cosmic struggle. In the heat of battle, the Aztec warriors did not merely fight for political dominance or territorial gain. They fought to ensure the gods' strength. Each warrior's death, each offering of their heart, was seen as an integral part of the cosmic cycle that kept the universe in motion. In this way, the Aztec military system was not just about conquest, it was about sustaining life itself. Through these offerings and sacrifices, the Aztecs were not simply appeasing the gods, they were actively participating in the ongoing cosmic struggle. Each act of devotion was a powerful contribution to the maintenance of life. The belief that the universe required constant sacrifice to keep it balanced gave every action a deep sense of importance. Whether in war, in the temple, or in the daily lives of the people, everything was seen as part of the greater cosmic dance. The understanding of sacrifice as an essential element of survival was not just an abstract idea for the Aztecs, it was a way of life. Every ritual, every offering, was a living embodiment of the truth that life and death, creation and destruction, are all bound together in an eternal cycle. The people did not see themselves as separate from the divine forces at work in the world. They were integral parts of that cycle. By offering their blood and hearts, they were ensuring that the cosmic balance was maintained and that the gods had the strength to continue their battle. This belief in the power of sacrifice to renew life, to keep the balance of the universe intact, shaped everything the Aztecs did. The Aztec worldview was deeply entrenched in the notion of balance. The universe, for the Aztecs, was a delicate equilibrium held in place by the combined efforts of both the divine and the human. Life was not a straightforward progression from birth to death, nor was it a singular existence defined only by the passing of time. Rather, life and death, creation and destruction, were part of an eternal cycle, a grand dance orchestrated by the gods and participated in by humanity. The gods were not seen as passive beings watching from afar, but active participants in this cosmic drama, struggling to maintain the forces that kept the universe alive. This battle between creation and destruction demanded constant renewal, and the Aztecs understood that their sacrifices were crucial for this cycle to continue. At the heart of this belief system was the understanding that the gods needed human energy to sustain their strength. The gods were not omnipotent beings who existed independent of the mortal world. They were tied to it. They needed offerings of human blood and hearts to fuel their power and maintain the cosmic balance. The sun god, Play, was the embodiment of this struggle. Each day, the sun rose, a symbol of Huitzila's victory over the forces of darkness, chaos, and destruction. However, this victory was not won effortlessly. Each morning, as the sun emerged from the horizon, it marked not only a victory for light over darkness, but also a reminder of the fragility of life. Huitzila's struggle was ongoing, and each victory required constant nourishment, something that could only come from the sacrifices made by the Aztecs. These sacrifices were not simply acts of religious devotion, but were seen as essential acts of survival. Without these sacrifices, the gods could not maintain the cosmic order, and the sun would fail to rise. The role of sacrifice was not just symbolic, but practical. The Aztecs believed that the survival of the world, the continuance of life itself, depended on the renewal of the divine energies that flowed between the gods and humanity. The gods provided protection, order, and life. In return, humanity offered its vitality to sustain the gods. This mutual relationship, one where both sides relied on the other, was fundamental to the Aztec understanding of existence. The gods could not survive without humanity's offerings, and humanity's survival depended on the gods' strength. This was not a one-sided system, but a shared responsibility. Humanity and the divine were partners in the ongoing battle to preserve life and maintain cosmic balance. The Aztecs saw themselves as integral parts of this divine mechanism. They did not view their role in the cosmic struggle as one of mere submission. They understood that their actions had far-reaching consequences. The sacrifices they made in the temples, the offerings of blood and hearts, were not only acts of devotion, but essential contributions to the survival of the universe. They understood that life, with all its fragility and beauty, depended on the continuous cycle of creation and destruction, and that in order for life to continue, there had to be a constant exchange of energy between the gods and humanity. Each act of sacrifice, whether performed by a common farmer or the emperor, was a vital part of this ongoing process. For the Aztecs, the emperor stood at the very center of this cosmic relationship. The emperor was not just a political leader. He was the spiritual leader of his people, the conduit between the gods and the people. His role was to ensure that the cosmic balance was maintained, and to do this, he led the most important rituals. These rituals, which involved offering his own blood and heart to the gods, were seen as the highest form of devotion. The emperor's sacrifice was not just for his people, it was for the survival of the world itself. In this sense, the emperor embodied the dual responsibility of leadership. He was both a ruler and a spiritual figure, whose sacrifices played a key role in the maintenance of cosmic harmony. The importance of sacrifice was reflected not only in the religious rituals, but also in the very architecture of the Aztec world. The grand temples and pyramids were not just architectural marvels, they were sacred spaces designed to facilitate the exchange of energy between humanity and the gods. These temples were the focal points of Aztec society, places where the people gathered to offer their sacrifices, knowing that these acts were essential to maintaining the cosmic balance. The priests performed their sacred duties, but it was the participation of the people through their offerings, their devotion that ensured the survival of the universe. The temples were seen as cosmic gateways, where the divine and the mortal realms met, where life and death, creation and destruction were continually renewed. In this way, sacrifice became an integral part of the Aztec way of life. It was not a practice undertaken merely out of religious obligation or fear of divine retribution. It was a vital part of the larger cosmic order. The people understood that their actions had direct consequences on the balance of the universe. Without their sacrifices, the gods could not maintain their strength, and the world would fall into chaos. The sun would fail to rise, the rains would cease, and life would come to an end. This understanding of the necessity of sacrifice was deeply ingrained in the Aztec culture, shaping everything from their politics to their art, their military conquests, their architectural achievements, and their cultural practices were all motivated by the belief that the survival of the world depended on the strength of the gods, which in turn depended on humanity's sacrifices. The cyclical nature of the Aztec worldview was most evident in their understanding of life and death. The Aztecs believed that life and death were not opposing forces, but part of a continuous cycle. Each act of destruction cleared the way for creation, and each act of creation was balanced by destruction. This perpetual cycle ensured the renewal of life, and in this process, sacrifice played a central role. The offering of blood and hearts was a symbol of the death of the old to make way for the birth of the new. In this way, death was not seen as an end, but as a transformative force, a necessary step in the ongoing process of creation. The Aztecs viewed their sacrifices as a way of participating in this cycle, ensuring that life would continue to flourish, that the gods would remain strong, and that the cosmic order would be upheld. This understanding of sacrifice as a vital force in the cosmic cycle was not confined to the elites or the priesthood alone. The common people, from farmers to warriors, understood that they, too, had a role to play in the ongoing struggle between creation and destruction. Each person's contributions, whether through their work, their devotion, or their sacrifices, were seen as essential to maintaining the balance. The military, too, played a crucial role in the cosmic struggle. Warriors did not fight merely for territorial conquest or political dominance. They fought for the gods, offering their strength and bravery in battle to ensure the survival of the universe. Each warrior's death in battle was seen as an offering to the gods, a contribution to the cosmic cycle that ensured the gods' continued strength. Ultimately, the Aztec worldview was one of profound responsibility. The people understood that their survival was tied to the survival of the gods, and that their sacrifices were necessary to maintain the cosmic balance. The gods, though powerful, were not self-sufficient. They depended on humanity's offerings to sustain their strength, and in turn, humanity depended on the gods to protect them, to ensure the sun would rise, the crops would grow, and life would continue. The Aztecs believed that through their sacrifices they played an active role in the preservation of life itself. Their sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, they were essential contributions to the ongoing battle between creation and destruction, life and death. Through these sacrifices, the Aztecs ensured that the world would continue to turn, that the sun would rise again, and that life would continue to flourish. In the end, the Aztec worldview was a worldview of active participation, a worldview where the gods and humanity were partners in the cosmic struggle to preserve balance. The Aztecs saw their sacrifices not as isolated acts, but as vital contributions to the survival of the universe. Their blood, their hearts, their vitality were the lifeblood of the gods, ensuring that the forces of chaos would be held at bay and that the sun would rise again. In this way, the Aztecs understood that their role in the cosmic drama was not one of submission, but of active involvement. Through their sacrifices, they ensured the survival of the world and the continued existence of life itself. The role of sacrifice in the Aztec worldview was not just a religious concept, but a guiding principle that shaped the very foundation of their civilization. Sacrifice was woven into the fabric of their daily lives, not as an isolated ritual, but as a constant, active participation in the cosmic struggle that governed the universe. The Aztecs did not see themselves as passive recipients of divine favor. Rather, they viewed their lives as integral parts of a greater, ongoing cycle of creation and destruction. Each offering they made was a necessary contribution to the survival of the cosmos, a conscious act that acknowledged the fragility of life and the need for constant renewal. The cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth was central to the Aztec understanding of existence. The Aztecs believed that life could not continue without death, just as creation could not exist without destruction. The gods, though powerful, were not self-sustaining. They relied on humanity to provide them with the energy they needed to continue their battle against chaos and darkness. The Aztecs understood that every offering they made, the blood, the hearts, the very essence of their lives, was not just an act of devotion, but a vital necessity. It was the very lifeblood that allowed the gods to maintain their strength, to ensure that the sun would rise, the crops would grow, and life would continue. This exchange of energy between humanity and the divine was more than a ritual. It was a reciprocal relationship, a mutual dependence. The Aztecs saw the gods not as distant figures, but as active participants in the world they inhabited. The gods required human sacrifice to stay strong, and humanity relied on the gods for protection, sustenance, and balance. This understanding formed the cornerstone of Aztec society. Whether in the grand temples or in the fields, the act of sacrifice was seen as an essential part of life. Every citizen, from the emperor to the common farmer, understood that their survival was intertwined with the survival of the gods. Their offerings ensured the gods' power and kept the universe in motion. For the Aztecs, this relationship was a sacred responsibility. They understood that their sacrifices were not just for the gods, but for the survival of the entire world. The emperor, as the highest representative of the people, had a particularly significant role to play. His sacrifices were seen as the most sacred, representing the ultimate exchange of energy between the divine and the mortal. The emperor's blood and heart were offered in the most important rituals, ensuring that the cosmic balance would be maintained and that life would continue for all. The Aztec military, too, played a critical role in this cosmic struggle. Warfare was not merely a means of conquest, it was seen as an essential part of maintaining the balance between life and death, creation and destruction. Each battle fought, each warrior's death, was an offering to the gods. The warriors did not just fight for territorial gain or political power, they fought to sustain the gods and the universe itself. The blood spilled on the battlefield was seen as an essential contribution to the cosmic order, a necessary part of the renewal of life. This understanding of sacrifice as a necessary force for renewal and balance was reflected in the grandeur of Aztec architecture. The pyramids and temples were not merely structures built for worship, but were seen as cosmic gateways, places where the divine and the mortal realms intersected. These sacred spaces were designed to facilitate the exchange of energy between humanity and the gods. The sacrifices offered in these temples were not just acts of piety, they were acts of survival, ensuring that the gods had the strength to continue their battle against the forces of chaos. The temples themselves were symbolic representations of the divine forces that held the universe together, and the offerings made within them were seen as vital to the ongoing struggle to maintain balance in the cosmos. The Aztecs understood that their role in the cosmic drama was not one of submission but of active participation. Each sacrifice, each offering, was a necessary act that ensured the survival of the world. They believed that without their contributions, the gods would weaken and the forces of chaos would overrun the world. By offering their blood and hearts, the Aztecs ensured that the gods had the strength to continue their battle, to protect the world, and to maintain the balance between creation and destruction. Ultimately, the Aztec worldview was one of profound responsibility. It was a worldview where life and death, creation and destruction, were not separate forces, but interconnected parts of a greater cosmic cycle. The Aztecs understood that for life to continue, there had to be a constant exchange of energy between humanity and the divine. Through their sacrifices, the Aztecs played an active role in the ongoing cosmic struggle. Their blood, their hearts, their vitality were the fuel that kept the universe in motion, and through these sacrifices, they ensured that life would continue, that the gods would remain strong, and that the cosmic balance would be preserved. In the end, the Aztecs saw themselves not as mere subjects of the gods, but as active partners in the struggle to preserve the cosmic order. Their sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, they were essential contributions to the survival of the world. The act of sacrifice was not a burdensome duty but a sacred responsibility, a way of life that ensured the continuation of the universe itself. By offering their lives, the Aztecs ensured that the gods would have the strength to fight, that the sun would rise, and that life would continue to flourish. This was the essence of the Aztec worldview, a worldview that saw life, death, creation, and destruction as interconnected parts of an eternal cycle that required the active participation of both humanity and the divine to ensure the survival of the world. The Aztec worldview was built upon a profound understanding of the universe as an intricate and delicate web of interconnected forces, constantly shifting between creation and destruction, life and death. This balance, essential for the survival of both the gods and humanity, was not passive or easily maintained. Rather, it required constant, active participation in the cosmic struggle, a struggle that the Aztecs believed was driven by the gods, but reliant upon the involvement of every human being. The gods, while immensely powerful, were not self-sustaining. They depended on humanity's offerings to replenish their strength and maintain the cosmic order. These offerings were not simple acts of worship, they were vital contributions to the ongoing survival of the universe. Central to the Aztec understanding of existence was the recognition that the forces of creation and destruction were not opposites, but parts of a greater whole. The cyclical nature of life, death, and rebirth was the very structure that underpinned their reality. Life could not continue without death, just as creation could not exist without destruction. The gods, representing various aspects of these forces, fought against the chaos that threatened the stability of the world. But their struggle could not be won alone. It was through the constant sacrifices of the Aztecs, their blood, their hearts, that the gods were renewed and strengthened. These sacrifices were seen not as acts of submission but as vital contributions to the survival of the cosmos. The sun god, Huitzilopochtli, symbolized the perpetual conflict between creation and destruction. Each day, as the sun rose in the east, it represented Huitzila's victory over the forces of darkness and chaos. The sunrise was a moment of triumph, but it was also a reminder of the fragility of life. Every day, Huitzila had to battle the forces of darkness to ensure that the sun would rise again. This daily victory was not without cost. The Aztecs believed that without their sacrifices, the gods could not maintain the strength required to fight these forces. Blood and hearts were offered to Huitzila and the other gods as a means of ensuring that the sun would rise again, that the cycle of life would continue. It was an essential exchange, a symbiotic relationship between humanity and the divine. The emperor, as the highest figure in Aztec society, played a crucial role in this cycle. His leadership was not just political, it was spiritual. The emperor was seen as the earthly representative of the gods, a figure who connected the divine to the mortal realm. His role in maintaining the cosmic balance was paramount. The emperor led the most important sacrifices, offering his own blood and heart to ensure that the gods remained strong and that the universe continued to function. His sacrifices were seen as the ultimate expression of devotion, not just for his people, but for the survival of the world itself. The emperor, in this sense, embodied the dual responsibility of leadership. He was both a ruler and a spiritual figure, whose actions were crucial to maintaining the cosmic order. But the emperor was not alone in this responsibility. The sacrifices made by the common people, farmers, warriors, and priests were just as integral to the survival of the cosmos. The Aztecs believed that every individual, regardless of their station in life, played a part in maintaining the balance between creation and destruction. Farmers offered their labor and their crops, warriors offered their bravery and their strength in battle, and priests offered their rituals and devotion. The people understood that their survival was tied to the survival of the gods, and that their sacrifices were essential for the continuation of life. The temples and pyramids that dotted the Aztec landscape were not merely places of worship or architectural feats. They were sacred spaces where the divine and mortal realms intersected. These structures were designed to facilitate the exchange of energy between humanity and the gods. The grand pyramids, the towering temples, and the sacred altars were not just physical spaces, they were symbolic representations of the cosmic forces at work in the world. These spaces were designed to hold the energy of life and death, creation and destruction, ensuring that the universe remained in balance. Every sacrifice offered within these spaces was seen as a vital contribution to the ongoing cosmic struggle. The idea of sacrifice permeated every aspect of Aztec life. The warriors, who fought not just for conquest but to ensure the gods' strength, understood that their deaths in battle were offerings to the gods. Each warrior's death was a vital contribution to the cosmic cycle, a necessary part of the ongoing struggle to maintain the balance between creation and destruction. The sacrifices made by the warriors were seen as essential to the survival of the world. Their blood, their vitality, was given to sustain the gods, ensuring that the forces of chaos would not overwhelm the forces of order. This understanding of sacrifice was reflected in the political, military, and religious systems of the Aztecs. The Aztec Empire was not just a political entity, it was a cosmic system, a mechanism designed to maintain the balance of the universe. The political power of the emperor and the priests was not just about ruling over land and people, it was about ensuring that the gods had the strength to maintain cosmic order. The military conquests of the Aztecs, too, were seen not just as a means of expanding the empire, but as a necessary part of the cosmic struggle. The Aztec Empire, in this view, was not an empire of conquest, it was an empire of survival. Each conquest, each victory, was a contribution to the survival of the world. The Aztecs also understood that life was fragile. They recognized the precariousness of existence and the constant threat of destruction. Their worldview was shaped by this awareness. The gods, despite their power, were not invincible. They were dependent on humanity to provide them with the energy they needed to fight the forces of chaos. The Aztecs believed that through their sacrifices, they helped to preserve the strength of the gods and ensured that the world would continue to turn. Without these sacrifices, they believed, the gods would weaken and the forces of chaos would overpower the forces of creation. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice was not confined to religious rituals. It was a belief that permeated every aspect of Aztec culture. The people of the Aztec Empire understood that their actions had far-reaching consequences. Each offering made in the temples, each ritual performed, was a vital part of the ongoing cosmic struggle. They did not view their sacrifices as mere acts of devotion. They saw them as essential contributions to the survival of the universe. This belief in the interconnectedness of all life, in the mutual dependence between humanity and the divine, was central to the Aztec worldview. In the end, the Aztec worldview was a worldview of active participation. The Aztecs saw themselves as integral parts of the cosmic struggle, not as passive subjects of divine will. Through their sacrifices, they ensured that the gods would have the strength to continue their battle, that the sun would rise again, and that life would continue to flourish. The Aztecs understood that life was fragile and fleeting, but they believed that through their sacrifices, they could ensure the survival of the world. Their sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, they were vital contributions to the cosmic balance, ensuring that creation and destruction, life and death, would continue in an eternal cycle. This worldview, one in which sacrifice was seen as a vital necessity, was the foundation of Aztec society. Every action, every offering, was a conscious acknowledgement of the role humanity played in the survival of the world. The Aztecs did not see themselves as passive spectators of the cosmic drama, but as active participants in it. They understood that without their sacrifices, the gods would weaken and the world would fall into chaos. Through their blood, their hearts, and their vitality, the Aztecs ensured that the universe would continue to turn, that life would continue to flourish, and that the cosmic balance would be preserved. In this understanding, the Aztecs found meaning, purpose, and a deep connection to the forces that governed the universe. Their sacrifices were not just acts of devotion, they were vital contributions to the ongoing struggle that defined their existence. Through their sacrifices, the Aztecs ensured the survival of the world and the continuation of life. This belief in the necessity of sacrifice, in the vital role humanity played in maintaining cosmic order, was at the heart of the Aztec worldview. It was a worldview that saw the gods and humanity as partners in the eternal struggle to preserve balance and ensure the survival of the universe. The Aztecs saw the world as a constantly shifting web of interdependent forces, a living entity in which every action, no matter how small, had consequences far beyond the immediate. Their worldview was built upon the understanding that the forces of creation and destruction were not adversaries, but inseparable partners. Each needed to keep the universe in motion. The gods and humanity, far from existing in separate realms, were seen as intertwined participants in this cosmic dance. Each had its role, and it was through the dynamic relationship between the two that life itself was sustained. Sacrifice, in this view, was not a simple act of worship or ritual. It was the very lifeblood of the universe, the essential fuel that allowed the gods to maintain their strength and continue their eternal struggle. The Aztecs believed that the gods, no matter how mighty, were not self-sustaining. Their power waned and needed to be constantly renewed. This renewal came from the people, their blood, their hearts offered in solemn rituals. These sacrifices were seen as a reciprocal exchange, where humanity gave life to the gods to ensure the survival of the world, and in return, the gods provided order, protection, and the forces necessary for life to flourish. Play, the sun god, was a prime example of this dynamic. The sun's journey across the sky was a vivid representation of the ongoing battle between creation and destruction. Each day, as the sun rose, it was a victory over the forces of darkness, a moment of life over death. But this victory, as the Aztecs understood, could not be won without the continuous offering of human life. The blood and hearts offered in sacrifice were the sustenance the gods needed to fuel their cosmic battle. Without these offerings, the sun would fail to rise, and the forces of darkness would overwhelm the world. The Aztecs saw the sun as not just a celestial body, but as a symbol of the ever-present tension between light and dark, life and death, which needed to be maintained through their own contributions. The emperor, as the highest figure in Aztec society, played a central role in this cosmic balance. His sacrifices were not only political acts, but also spiritual ones, deeply intertwined with his role as the mediator between the gods and the people. The emperor's blood was offered in the most sacred rituals, his sacrifice symbolizing the connection between the divine and the mortal. His role was not just to rule over the people, but to ensure that the cosmic order was maintained through his actions. The emperor understood that his leadership extended beyond earthly matters. It was his spiritual duty to ensure the survival of the world by performing the rituals that connected humanity to the gods. However, it wasn't just the emperor or the priests who played vital roles in the preservation of the cosmic balance. Every individual in Aztec society, from the farmers to the warriors, understood that their actions contributed to the larger cosmic cycle. The farmers offered the fruits of their labor, the warriors gave their strength and bravery in battle, and the priests performed the sacred rituals to ensure that the gods remained strong. The Aztecs recognized that their survival was not an isolated event, but was inherently tied to the survival of the gods and the ongoing maintenance of the balance between creation and destruction. The temples, pyramids, and sacred spaces scattered across the Aztec world were not just physical structures, they were manifestations of the divine forces that shaped existence. These spaces were designed to facilitate the exchange of energy between humanity and the gods. They were the meeting points between the mortal and the divine, where the continuous flow of life and energy could be maintained. These structures were sacred not just in their design but in their purpose to ensure that the balance of the cosmos was upheld. The rituals performed within these sacred spaces, the sacrifices made, were acts of cosmic importance, vital to the ongoing existence of life. In this understanding, sacrifice was not just an individual act, it was a communal responsibility. The Aztecs saw themselves as active participants in the eternal struggle to preserve the balance of the universe. Their sacrifices were essential, and they understood that without their contributions, the forces of chaos would overwhelm the forces of creation. The blood and hearts offered in the rituals were not just acts of devotion, they were essential acts of survival. The Aztecs believed that the universe depended on this constant renewal of energy, and their sacrifices were the means by which this renewal was achieved. The understanding of sacrifice as a necessary force in the cosmic cycle was deeply embedded in Aztec culture. It permeated not just religious practice, but every aspect of their way of life. The Aztecs believed that their survival, and the survival of the world, was tied to the gods' strength. The gods needed their vitality to maintain cosmic order, and in return the gods provided life, protection, and sustenance. This symbiotic relationship was the foundation of the Aztec worldview, a worldview that saw humanity not as subjugated to the gods, but as active contributors to the ongoing struggle that defined existence. Through their sacrifices, the Aztecs ensured that the universe would continue to function, that the forces of light and order would triumph over the forces of chaos and darkness. Their blood, their hearts, their devotion were the fuel that kept the cosmic engine running. And in this way, the Aztecs understood their place in the universe, not as passive recipients of divine favor, but as active participants in the ongoing struggle to preserve balance, to ensure that life would continue to flourish, and that the gods would have the strength to protect the world. In this partnership between the gods and humanity, the Aztecs found meaning and purpose. Their sacrifices were not just acts of worship, they were vital contributions to the ongoing survival of the world. Through their blood and hearts, the Aztecs ensured that the cosmic struggle would continue, that the sun would rise again, that life would continue to renew itself in its eternal cycle. The sacrifices they made were the key to the survival of the world, and in this responsibility, the Aztecs found their place in the grand design of the universe.